In 1918, off the east coast of Australia, a group of lobster fishermen watched a creature so colossal rise out of the water that they refused to go back out to sea for weeks. Today, you're going to see incredible cases where the thing so many people are convinced is a megalodon was actually seen. From teeth embedded in the hull of a ship to videos showing impossibly enormous sharks closing in on people, you're going to see what science swears cannot exist: Megalodon sightings. Number 6. We begin this list with something thousands of people saw with their own eyes. It has no confirmed date and no verified location. It arrived the way so many things arrive today, through social media, in the form of a video that went viral without anyone really knowing where it had come from. And even so, it's one of the most frightening on the list. According to how it spread, it was a completely ordinary day at the beach, until people began to notice something strange in the water, abnormally high waves rising with no wind for no apparent reason, as if something enormous were moving just beneath the surface. And then it appeared. A gigantic dorsal fin advancing fast toward the pier. So large that the people there couldn't believe what they were seeing. Several pulled out their phones and started recording, while others backed away from the water's edge. No one could say for certain where or when it was filmed, but that didn't stop the video from taking off, nor stop the same word from appearing in the comments over and over again: Megalodon. A fin in broad daylight is frightening, but what's far more terrifying is what someone claimed to have recorded where the sunlight never reaches. Number 5. Number 5 is quite possibly the most famous megalodon video in the entire history of the internet. You've probably seen it without knowing you saw it. An enormous creature, barely lit by the lights of a camera, moving through the total darkness of the seafloor. The version that went viral made a claim that froze the blood, that the animal had been filmed more than 1.5 miles deep in the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on the planet, that it measured more than 50 feet, that it was so colossal that, the moment it appeared, every other shark feeding nearby fled within seconds, as if they knew exactly what they were facing. Its body was so large it didn't even fit fully within the frame. In time, someone traced the origin of those images, and the story, in theory, fell apart. The video was apparently first published around 2008, and the original footage may even date back to 1989. Not from the Mariana Trench, but from Suruga Bay in Japan. The explanation that circulated was that it was a Pacific sleeper shark, a real deep-water species. Case closed, some would say. Except for one detail. The Pacific sleeper shark is, in itself, one of the most enigmatic animals in the ocean. It lives in the darkness, is almost never seen, and the truth is that no one knows for certain how large it can actually grow, because live specimens have barely been studied. So perhaps that shadow was just a sleeper shark. But if so, why did the other sharks flee from it the way you flee from a predator? But a video always leaves a crack open for doubt. So what if we go back to an era without cameras, when all that existed was the testimony of the person who saw it with their own eyes? Number 4. In 1918, off the east coast of Australia, one of the most cited sightings in the history of the phenomena was recorded. Near Broughton Island, a group of lobster fishermen described a colossal creature that rose from the depths and carried off their traps as if they weighed nothing. The episode was documented by the Australian naturalist David Steed. According to his account, the witnesses spoke of an animal around 100 feet long, almost completely white, with a head the size of the roof of a house. The traps that disappeared were not light. They were over 3 feet across and secured with ropes, weighing several hundred pounds. Steed pointed to one detail that would give weight to the testimony. The fishermen were hardened men of the sea, not prone to exaggeration, and they remained so terrified that they avoided fishing for weeks. Even so, the case never left behind a single tangible piece of evidence, only the word of those who were there. More than a century later, another sighting would have the exact opposite. Millions of witnesses and a camera recording everything. Number 3. Case number 3 is the most recent on this list, and also the most watched. It happened in May of 2021, more than 100 miles off the coast of Massachusetts, in the open Atlantic Ocean, aboard a research sailing vessel, the SSV Corwith Kramer, crewed by marine biology students. One of them, Alex Albrecht, was high up on the mast when he spotted the animal. By his own account, at first he mistook it for a whale. It was the sudden sweep of its tail fin that identified as a shark. But a shark of a size that matched no species you'd expect in those waters. A dark, immense silhouette moving slowly, pressed against the hull of the vessel.
Holy.
Albrecht filmed the scene and posted it online. The video went viral, and in the comments people kept asking the same question, over and over. Was that a megalodon? The expert's answer came quickly. It was not a megalodon, but a basking shark, the second largest shark species in the world, an animal that can exceed 30 feet, but feeds by filtering plankton and is harmless. A solid, documented, verifiable explanation. And yet, for several days, 37 million people looked at that silhouette and thought the very same thing. Up to this point, all the cases share one limit: images, shadows, testimonies, material that can be mistaken, exaggerated, or explained away. In case number 2, for the first time, something stopped being an image. It became an object that could be measured. Number 2. Case number 2 is the only one on this list that, for a brief period, left behind direct physical evidence. And that is precisely why it's one of the most cited. In 1954, a cargo ship Rachel Cohen arrived at the port of Adelaide in southern Australia after sailing through Indonesian waters. The vessel was placed in dry dock for a routine inspection of the hull. During that inspection, the workers found 17 large teeth, about 4 inches each, embedded in the wood of the hull, near the propeller. The propeller, a piece of solid metal, was bent. The width of the bite mark measured roughly 6.5 feet. The evidence pointed to only one possible scenario. A large animal had bitten the hull of a moving ship with enough force to bend its propeller and leave part of its own set of teeth driven into the wood. What should have been the most important piece of evidence in the history of the phenomena was never analyzed. The 17 teeth were lost during the maintenance work itself, before any specialist could examine them. Without them, the case cannot be confirmed, but it cannot be refuted either. The only thing that was recorded was that measurement, a bite roughly 6.5 feet across in the hull of a ship in the middle of the 20th century. And here, a reasonable objection arises. Those teeth were never examined, so their origin remained open to doubt. But there is an earlier case in which the teeth were preserved, were studied, and raised a problem that science still hasn't fully resolved. Number 1. Case number 1 is the oldest on the entire list, and yet it's the only one that made it all the way to a laboratory. It doesn't rest on a video or a testimony or a piece of evidence that was lost. It rests on two teeth that still exist. Between 1872 and 1876, the HMS Challenger carried out the first great oceanographic expedition in history, a scientific voyage devoted to studying and mapping the floor of the oceans. During one of its dredges in the Pacific, the crew pulled two megalodon teeth from the seabed. Both shared a feature that would only make sense much later. A thin layer of manganese oxide coated their surface. Manganese oxide builds up on objects on the seafloor at a known and extremely slow rate, on the order of a few millimeters every million years. When the thickness of the layer covering those teeth was measured, the calculations produced a result that was hard to accept. Ages of approximately 11,000 and 24,000 years. Not millions, thousands. Figures that would place those specimens dozens of times closer to our own era than the accepted extinction date for the species, set at around 3.5 million years ago. The official explanation holds that the teeth would in fact be much older and that only the outer layer is recent due to the movement and redeposit of sediments on the seafloor. It's a solid hypothesis and probably the correct one. But there's a detail that, more than a century later, still doesn't quite fit: the thickness of that layer. It's too thin for an object that had supposedly spent millions of years on the bottom of the sea. And as long as that thin film of manganese is still there, the question remains open. How long in reality had those teeth been waiting in the darkness? Ground Zero. And there's one last section left, outside the countdown. We call it Ground Zero, a space reserved for the most extreme and strangest material of all. It is quite possibly the most widely shared image of a supposedly living megalodon, a single photograph in which a shark of enormous size swims alongside a submarine in dark waters and with an aged stone, similar to that of an old military archive. For years, it circulated across the internet, presented as the definitive proof that the creature was still down there. Later analysis was conclusive. It was a fabrication. The image combined a real archival photograph of a submarine in the Atlantic with the fin of a shark added on top, and a sepia tone had been applied to reinforce its appearance of age. Fake from beginning to end. But the most interesting fact, it's not that the photo was fake. It's how many people wanted to believe it was real, because someone went to the trouble of fabricating it, and millions took it as real without questioning it. And that, perhaps, is the true mark the megalodon leaves, not on the bottom of the sea, but on our need to keep believing it's still there.